Mary D'Anico. I'm the director of the Weglyn Endowed Chair for Multicultural Studies, and I am super excited to have our very first social justice webinar series with our wonderful friends in the area, starting with my colleague, Dr. Alvaro Huerta, who's a professor in ethnic and women's studies and urban and regional planning. We go way back, I think like 5 years now, right? So, and who is also a member of the Weglyn Advisory Board. And he is going to be doing the wonderful introductions of our esteemed guests. But today we are going to be talking about Latino males, state violence, and healing in the Barrio. One thing I did want to remind folks is that this session is being recorded. And just so you know, if you're uncomfortable with being visible, it's okay if you take your video off. But if you're comfortable, we would love to see your faces. So it's really up to you, whichever way works for you. Just a little bit about the Weglyn Endowment. And the people that you see behind me are Mickey and Walter Weglyn. They are the ones who gifted us this endowment to ensure that our campus remains mindful about social justice work, largely because of their own biography. Michi is a survivor of the internment camp. She wrote a book based on her own documentation, Years of Infamy, which led to the redress of the Japanese repatriation. Walter was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he became a very famous chemist that made perfume, and he worked for the Perry Como show and was a costume designer. They met in New York and fell in love, and they fell in love with Cal Poly. And so we're very fortunate that their friendships with Bob and Agnes Suzuki, our former president, led to this endowment. And through this work, our committee this year have committed to ensuring we try to put on programs that matter, that folks actually care about, that is grounded with the foundation of social justice and action. And so we couldn't think of a better way to kick off our series with this panel. So thank you so much. And with that, I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for coming. You can all give your thumbs too if you like.
Oh, we do thumbs?
Yeah, 3 thumbs. And I'm gonna hand it on over to my buddy and I'll mute myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. D'Anico. And you know, there's people being on the waiting room, so if Kelly or Dr. D'Anico can accept them, that'll be fantastic. So my name is Dr. Alvaro Huerta, and I'm very happy to be part of this webinar, and I really appreciate the support that we get from the Weglyn Center here at Cal Poly Pomona, a great university. And I'm very happy that Dr. D'Anico believes in our mission of social justice and looking at different groups, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, Filipinos, and others, so that our voices are represented. So today we're going to talk about Latino males, violence in the Vario. And we hope to replicate this seminar in focusing on Latinas under the same topic and have a Latina moderator to do the same. So I just want to say that the two presenters here, we have a lot in common. We're all of Mexican origin. We all grew up in Bow Heights, LA, Ramona Gardens Housing Project. We all experienced violence, and we all work with youth and adults to try to overcome that violence. You know, today, I want to focus on Hector Verdugo and Ismael Huerta as experts. And at the end of the day, anybody who has survived the main street of America, as far as I'm concerned, holds a PhD in terms of how to survive and how to help others survive as well. So I'll just go one by one and give a brief introduction, and then I'll ask some questions so they can elaborate on their biographies. So Ismael Huerta is the son of immigrants from Michoacan. He was born and raised in Ramona Gardens housing projects in East Los Angeles, or Boyle Heights. And for over a decade, he's been working in Santa Barbara, working with youth and their families in terms of dealing with issues of violence and adversities that brown boys and girls face. Hector Verdugo was also born and raised in Ramona Gardens housing projects. I think both of you are General Hospital.
White Memorial.
What?
UCLA.
Hector,
White Memorial.
White Memorial? Okay.
Boyle Heights.
De La Hoya was born in De La Hoya with White Memorial. So Hector Verdugo also was born and raised in Ramona Gardens housing projects. And for over a decade, he has been working at Homeboy Industries, where he's Associate Executive Director of Homeboy Industries. And actually with Hector, at Urban and Regional Planning, one of the two departments that I work in, because I'm a Mexican, so they gave me two departments for the price of one, is we actually honored him with the Dale Prize for his work working with homeboys in and out of the prisons and in and out of gangs. So for me, having these two individuals present to me, they are the experts, not people that were in a gang for 2 weeks and write a book about gangs, or not people that are at the university and that never grew up in the Vario that write about gangs. They don't know anything about what it is to live in the hood. So with that, I want them to speak their truth. Don't hold back. I want you to see the insider's perspective of how it is. What are the rules of the Vario? What are the norms of the Vario? Same as the ghetto, where there is this idea that the barrios and the ghettos are dysfunctional, are disorganized, but they're not. They have their own rules and their own norms. They're just organized differently. And these rules that they operate under allow them to survive. And for me, being a skinny Mexican for most of my life, I've always used humor to survive. Actually, I applied for the gang, but it got rejected because I was too skinny to defend the neighborhood. But
And you weren't that funny either, bro.
yeah, I wasn't that funny. But because of my humor, I was allowed to be able to be friends with some of these homeboys and homegirls that protected me, to be able to gain some type of respect. So with that, I do also want to say, loud and clear, that Black Lives Matter. And when George Floyd was killed, and Breonna Taylor was killed, I couldn't watch, I couldn't, listen to the reports, because it made me cry that Black people are being hunted in this country by white supremacists. So for me, it has to do with, when it comes to brown people, it's not Black Lives Matter, but it's Black Lives Matter and Latinos are also being killed. It's not but. So I want to get away from this division between Black and brown. And I want to get away from this division of brown versus brown, east side versus west side, south versus north. We can't be fighting against each other in neighborhoods that we don't even own. And we can't have these racial divisions among each other, because it only benefits the status quo. It only benefits the racists, that rule this country. It only benefits the orange man in the White House. So we need to be clear about who we are and what we are. At the end of the day, we didn't create the barrio. At the end of the day, the barrio is about segregation, and we were forced to live in segregated communities because of systemic racism, because of redlining, because of housing policies that limited and prohibited Black and brown people to live in the suburbs. So we got to get it straight. It's not us, it's not our dysfunctional families that cause our violence, it's the system that caused our families. And that's the bottom line. and the trauma and the experience that we feel and we experience as Black and brown and Asian and others, Native Americans, it has to do with oppression. It has to do with conquest. So for us here today, it's not just about talking about this violence that we experience, but also the healing process as well. In Los Angeles, for example, according to the LA Times on June 9, 2020, 886 people were killed by the police that were ruled homicides by the coroner. And of those, 53% or 465 were Latino, and 25% or 219 were Black, and the majority being male. Black men and boys and brown men and boys. So we have more in common than not. And right now, when it comes to brown boys and men, we are less likely to go to the university and more likely to go to the prison system, juvenile hall and the state prisons. There are over 2 million people in the prison system in the United States, and the majority being Black and brown. So we must get over these divisions, Black and brown, get over these divisions, brown versus brown, and unite and defend our people and defend our rights as human beings. So this is what it's about today. And I say this clear without any hesitation. And with Hector and Ismael, you know, they grew up in the streets. They know how it is to survive. So for me, it's a privilege to be here. And they experienced more pain and suffering than I did. I kind of escaped it somehow, miraculously. But the idea here is just to get some insight from people that are not only survived the violence of our barrios that caused by the state, caused by white supremacy, but also that survived it but are giving back to our communities and are reaching out. And that's what it's about today, people. And so I appreciate everybody, the 123 people that are here. So I'm gonna start with Ismael and then just go with Hector, and then we'll go back and forth. So the first question, I usually don't write questions down, but for this one, I do want to kind of give some order. So the first question for Ismael, you know, feel free to talk a little bit about yourself, elaborate a little bit more, and also the work you've been doing for the last 10 years, especially with youth and their parents. And then I'll ask the same question to Hector, focusing on adults. Ismael.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you. First, I want to thank all of you for being on, and thank you for hosting us. And it's definitely an honor to share space with Hector and Alvaro and everyone on. I know we have like an hour and something. We can't share too much information because it's like a book, but I'll try to share as best as I can. I'm the youngest of 8 children. Grew up in the projects, and I didn't think growing up in the projects, I didn't think I felt poor. My parents made sure there was food on the table, clothes, you know, on our backs, and a roof over our head. And growing up in the projects for me was a beautiful thing. You know, me and Hector grew up since elementary when Hector had a little feather dude. Hey. Probably one of the best hairdo that ever I've seen before. Hey. But to me, it was, as I got older, I think some of the stuff that I seen as a young kid was considered the norm. And there was a lot of, you know, internal violence, internal fights, and even in a lot of my friends with broken homes and didn't understand that. And I was dealing with and struggling my own, trying to understand where I fit in a family of 8 in a big home. And I don't know if you remember this, Hector. This was in high school. This is one of the projects where Father Greg volunteered. And I want to share this because it's really important. And it kind of sticks with my head because I saw the image of men, not in a positive light, in a negative light, for a very long time. I was hanging out with this couple of homeboys from a different neighborhood, and they got paged. And there was a deal going on. And there was a male, I can't even call this brother a Chicano because he's not a Chicano. It was a Hispanic vato in his late 40s. He was driving like a 79 Thunderbird Gold, and he opens a trunk. And when I saw he opened up the trunk, there was like a rag and there was a bunch of guns. And here's this man that looks like can be related to me selling guns to young Chicanitos. And I was tripping out on that. And I didn't understand that at first. I was looking around, and then that man was looking at me, looking all trippy, and eventually he took off. Don't remember if the guns were bought or not, but that was what blew me away. It was a sheriff from Orange County that was selling guns to homeboys in East LA, and that was gente. And that just blew me away. So I just have vivid imageries of certain men that did a lot of negative when I was a little youngster. And so that really, like, it felt like it was yesterday, you know, just sharing it gave me the chills because I just didn't understand that. And so when those things were happening, you know, at a young age, I think at 17, I became very numb to death. You know, we even talked about our funeral because we're losing childhood friends. And we lost a really good friend, Eddie, we call him Puppet, that was shot by a cop, you know, and that hit really hard because it was my neighbor for a long time. So things like that just really hit home. And I remember telling myself, you know, if I make it to adulthood, you know, because we all talk about our death at a young age, but if I make it to adulthood, I'm gonna dedicate my life to serving young folks. And man, I get the chills even saying it right now, bro. You know, and I made it. You know what I mean? But there's a price that comes with it because when you're working with young folks, you think it's easy, but it's really not because you're opening up a lot of wounds. And so their triggers are my triggers. You know, their reflections of what they're going through reflects on what I'm going through or what I've gone through. And so I realized that there's a lot of trauma in the space that I'm working at. And to heal that trauma, I have to focus on myself. And so that was really a test. I felt my students were my teachers. I've been working for the district for about 12 years now, being in February. And I remember when I got this job at the district here, they asked me a question. And I said, you know, Ismael, there's like 50 people applying for this job. What makes you unique about getting this job, applying for this job? I said, well, honestly, I don't want to hear about kids dying. So I'm willing to devote my time and energy to help these kids out. And while I was working with the kids and eventually got the job, I was working with the kids. I told the schools, principals, they say, hey, you really don't have a gang problem in your school. I said, how's that? I said, because there's only one gang per school. You know, in East LA, in the schools I went to, there were 7, 8 gangs in the school. So there's always conflict going on. I said, but you got a lot more internal conflict and a lot of prejudice going on. And of course, at the time, this was 12 years ago, they didn't want to hear that. And so I didn't hold back. I was an outsider coming into a beautiful city like Santa Barbara and listening to the kids. So I felt like I was an advocate for the students because they didn't feel they were being heard from some of their teachers and some admin. And so I just kind of put myself out there and just, you know what, this is my time to give back. And it was a 1-year pilot. Now it's 12 years later, I'm still standing with this good job that I love dearly. And, you know, I'm still here. You know, I'm still doing the work.
That's right.
So, gracias, Ismael. And the same with Hector. And feel free not to hold back, you know, whatever. This is not a forum where we prohibit free speech. So feel free to just speak your truth. You know, at the end of the day, you are who you are, and this is what it is. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna speak and I'll ask a few questions for the first half of this presentation. And then, so if you have questions, go ahead and ask them now or throughout the chat. Dr. Danico is gonna help me moderate, and so we'll ask the questions after the speakers respond or the presenters respond to these questions. So the same question for you, Hector. Talk a little bit about your own background, and then how is it that you evolved in the person that you are now in terms of your own work at Homeboy Industries and helping our communities heal.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate just being in this circle. You know, I grew up in Ramona Gardens, and I think my life has had a little bit of a different route. Um, my grandfather was a heroin addict, gang member. My father was a heroin addict, a gang member. My mom was a heroin addict. My father died a week before my twin and I were born. And in some of my earliest memories are of, my mom's boyfriend, uh, her and him doing heroin. We're sleeping, next door. They had just a sheet between us, and you could see the shadows of wrapping their arms and a bent spoon, and something that I feel a child should never see. It's questionable. It's dark. You could feel the darkness, um, and then the violence that came in these times, that from hitting my mom, and then how it spilled over to us, the boys. And so it made me question everything. It made me fearful of what's going to happen next. As a child is growing up in this environment, there's no one to be trusted, because how come you, mom, are not leaving this dude? I know that he's not my dad. So there was my mom, like, they say going to my grandma's house, her mother's house, and I'll be back, you guys. And we would look at her leave and say, Mom, please don't leave. As a child would say, no, Mom, don't go. Stay. I'll be back right now. I'm just going to go to the store. And then she'll be gone for days. And then we had to dealing with my grandma was cool, but just being in the chaos of a home of, in the projects where I had aunts and uncles, all of them were gang members. Well, most of them were gang members. And, the loud screaming and then my brothers and I would just kind of be in the way. I felt that for a lot of my life. I felt like I was in the way. A lot of my life preteen, and just trying to navigate through this, navigate with, of my mom gets busted, who's gonna take us? Who's gonna take care of us? They always kept the twins together, but they separated my older brother and my younger brother, and they separated us from them. And those I remember feeling those feelings of hurt, of not knowing what's gonna happen tomorrow. Um, I remember being in elementary school, and kind of just daydreaming, looking outside of the window, and I could see this dude's car that passed by, on Murchison Street, and they say, that's that dude's car. That's my mom left him. Why is he in this area? Um, and and then coming out and accusing my mom, like, you're back with that guy, huh? Well, we're gonna try to work it out, son. And it's just betrayal after betrayal. These things, they build inside of me. And then I remember, like, during those mid 80s, when the AIDS epidemic came about, and I thought, oh, it's not going to hit my family. Nobody's gay in my family. And then thinking, just as a kid would think, like, are we safe? Are we going to be okay? And then once they started showing needles, I said, oh, my mom's going to die of AIDS. And I remember just, like, trying to block her out of my heart, because, I'm going to lose my mom too. Now what's going to happen? I barely have her right now. So these mental obstacles that I had to go through, besides, people ODing in my house. I remember that. I remember the mechanic getting killed right outside of my house, and watching the blood go down the pathway, and the senoras trying to clean it up, and watching it, coagulate and all. Like, this is a child looking and dealing with all this stuff right in front of him. And I think about this now, because because these are things that I need to heal from. So as I got older, um, once I got into junior high school, and let me say this: the violence from us getting our butts kicked by men who were with my mom, that violence it transfers down to my older brother. My older brother used to beat us up because he was left with us at times, because this time my mom got her own place in the projects. And and then and then finally, like, I don't know what age I was, maybe 12 or 13. I remember getting hit by my brother, and then I finally just said, I'm done. I'm done with this. And I said, like, I don't know what possessed me to just hit him as hard as I could in his face. And I did. Bah! And I ran. I ran out my pad in the projects, ran out the projects, ran to Lincoln Park, and went up a tree that I used to love to climb, and stood up there until nighttime. And I was like, oh shit, now what do I do? I wasn't gonna go home, so I just decided I'm gonna just walk. And I remember staying at this place in Rose Hill projects. I had met these kids from Rose Hills. Actually, I had a girlfriend there, and I stayed with her until she had to go inside, and then I went down into the projects. And I knew some of them. Actually, Milo and I were good friends with a lot of the guys, and they said, "Come and stay at my pad, dog. Don't trip." And I stood there for a while, and anyways, I went on a good one right now. Um, my life was my life had a crazy route. By the time I was in eighth grade, I was already being prepped for juvenile hall by my homeboys. I was already jumped into a gang, and being prepped by juvenile hall was, once you get jumped in a gang, I'm going to surround myself in violence. This is the way it's going to be, and I don't know how to fight, but I'm going to fight. I'm going to just throw these bad boys and see where they land. And juvenile hall was a rites of passage for a lot of us. And I remember, as a matter of fact, your guys' neighbor, Sniper, he roughed me up a couple times just to make sure that I was ready for juvenile hall, to prep me so that when I go in there, I was going to fight big guys and not to be afraid. And again, I think about this child going, I would never want that for my child. I would never, first off I don't want my son ever fighting. That's a horrible feeling, unless he's in a boxing ring and he's learning how to fight. But these are the things that a lot of us have to deal with, and me specifically, that I had to deal with. And from juvenile hall to really just surviving on your own. I started drug dealing really at a certain age. By the time I was 17, I was drug dealing at a really pretty high level compared to nickels and dimes when I started as a kid, and then crack. And then next thing you know, I started dealing with some heavy weight. And then that heavy weight gave me freedom. I remember that. I love that. I love the freedom of, now I don't need nobody. Now I don't need no aunts that are gonna get pissed at me because they're having issues. I don't need no one, saying, I can't buy that for you. Or I could buy my own stuff, like I didn't need nobody. There was a certain freedom that my twin and I had. We had our own apartments. We lived next to each other. We had our own cars. We had our own ways of besides, regular fights, to protect ourselves with other decent weapons that we, started to use. And then I remember being prepped for prison. I was 17 years old, and my homeboy Poison Ivy, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, cuate, get ready. You're gonna be going to prison." And I was like, I don't know. I thought I started getting a real big ego, and I had money, And I was like, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be able to catch me on this one. He goes, sit down. I need to talk to you. Like, you're going to prison, dog. And this is what you need to do when you get there. And he prepped me for prison. And I listened. And it was interesting to hear about every California prison and every yard. There will be one of my homeboys in that yard. And I was proud of that. And when I went to prison, there was my homeboys, my family, my homeboys. I remember my homeboy Paul Holguin, when he saw me in Donovan State Prison, he looked at me. He says, "Oh, twin." He said, "Oh, Guate." He says, "I want to cry." When I was 18 years old, he goes, "I want to cry." And I looked at him like, what are you doing? You know, like I got mad at him, like, hey, I'm here. What, am I not supposed to be here? And I got a little angry with him, but when I look back at it, I would have, and if it was the other way around, I would have cried too. I would have wanted to cry to see another kid come back into this place where he's probably been in the joint multiple times, as most of our people do. So when I finally, I lived this life. By the time I was about 25, 26, I had been through so much. I had a lot of money. I still had a decent amount of money, and my life I had beaten some really heavy cases that were going to keep me in prison for the rest of my life. And then I finally just like looked back and I said, like, what am I going to do? I beat this case. I have money. I know how to make money. I'm going to be in this case again. And this repeats itself. This violence will come back, and I will defend myself viciously. And I will be back in prison. And this doesn't make sense. So then it got me to reflect. What happened to me? And then you started thinking about that child's guidance, the the love. What happened to love? What happened to nourishment? And then I just didn't have no answers until I had a friend of, matter of fact, a friend of Solomon, Richard Casanera. I became a friend of him, and we were just talking on the phone one day, and he said, "Why don't you go to Homeboy Industries?" And he's from Oxnard. I was like, "What do you know about Homeboy Industries, dog? That's my backyard."
Solomon is my brother. Ismail is my brother too.
Yeah, and anyways, so then I came to Homeboy Industries, and I seen Father Greg, which I met when I was a child in juvenile hall, and it was like "Oh, Father Greg, do you remember me? Yeah, I'm one of the twins from Hazard, from Ramona Gardens." And he was like, "Where have you been, my son?" And he of course I remember you. And I found out he'd be bullshitting, because he says that to everybody. He's like, "Who's that guy?" But it was really, really cool to be knowing that Homeboy Industries is made for us, for gang members. And maybe he didn't remember me, but the embrace was real. The talk was love. And he said, "I want you to be right here at Homeboy Industries." And yeah, to make a long story short, I jumped on board, and I still didn't know what I was gonna do. Then I started getting introduced to healing. I started getting introduced to creative writing and certain classes that had me reflect and hold the mirror up to myself, and that mirror, is painful. And yeah, and so I went through what I went through, and we went from this old building on First Street, on First and State Street, to where we're at now. And probably about a year and a half into it, I started kind of moving up the ranks pretty fast. And in Father Greg, said, I want you to be like my right hand. I want you to run this place when I'm gone, son. I don't know if he thinks that anymore, but he said that, and I was like, then I said, put your thinking cap on, Hector, and pray to God, because I need wisdom big time. And so it's an honor to be a part of Homeboy Industries, and it's an honor to work hand in hand with brothers and sisters that have gone through a lot of the things that I have gone through, and that we can heal together and become, I don't, G wouldn't agree with me on this, but I feel like I'm becoming a better human being to my brothers and my sisters that surround me, and I'm not passing on the curses of generations to my sons. And I'll leave it right there, and we'll get into some more stuff, I'm sure.
Gracias, Hector. And everybody, feel free to cry. This is an open space.
Hey, Alvaro, can I add to that? I think it's important.
No, definitely. Yeah, I was gonna just follow up with that. So go ahead and yeah, I want to open it more like a dialogue back and forth. So Ismael, go ahead.
Yeah, with Homeboy Industry, I do definitely want to acknowledge Homeboys has been a big pivotal part of my work. I have taken, I don't know how many students. I think at a meeting one time, they're like, "Oh, there's that guy. There's that homeboy that brings all these kids." I think I brought like 200 and something students in a year to Homeboys.
I love
And I was
seeing
like, yeah, I feel like I work there, but I don't get a paycheck, but I just get recognized, and I appreciate the work that they do. And it just, to me, it's an honor, because I tell students, I say, I'm going to share a little bit about your future. So we're going to go to Homeboys and speak to some people that actually can open you up in a beautiful way. And you're going to hear some stories that are going to touch you. And then we had the opportunity when Hector, I think the last time I was at Homeboys, Hector spoke to my students. And some students have told Hector, I'm going to system. I'm going to get locked up. That's what I want to do. And Hector will share some truth with them. And unfortunately, that kid did get locked up. And then he sees me at camp, and I go visit camp over here in Los Piratos for about a couple of years now. And he's there, and he tells me, I still remember Hector telling me that story. And I don't want to be here no more, Ismael. I think I had to experience it myself. And I think it's a beautiful collaboration when my work coincide with Homeboy Industry and the people at Homeboys and the homegirls there. It's definitely been an honor to collaborate with them. And I think it's part of my job to bridge that, because there's beautiful stories there. It's a room full of people with PhDs from the neighborhood that you can't get this in a book, So it's been tremendous an honor to still have this collaboration. And I see Father Greg at one time, and he recognized me from afar, and he said, "Ismael, what's up, brother?" I'm like, "Hey, what up, bro?" So it's a beautiful thing to be part of that. So I just want to add that to this plática.
Hey, Ismael, one of the students were asking where you work. I don't think they heard exactly where you work and what camp you're at.
I work for the Santa Barbara Unified School District up in Santa Barbara. I'm the lead youth outreach worker. My main focus is to, when I was hired specifically, was to focus on youth violence. In 2007, a young man was killed by another young man on State Street at 1:30 afternoon. And at the time, I was a student at UCSB. And when I heard about that death, this young kid named Nacho, it hit me, as an adult. It hurt because I'm no longer that kid, and I wasn't numb anymore. I opened up my corazón, and even sharing this right now, I get the chills even bringing it up. I remember telling a good friend of mine, say, "Man, there needs to be work done here." But I wasn't planning to stay in Santa Barbara. I was planning to go back home. My goal was to work in East Lake Juvenile Hall. I had a job interview there, and I took this job as a one-year pilot, and I've been here with the district 12 years in February. Total, I've been here 15 years, still here. And I wear chanclas now, by the way, because Santa Barbara does that to you people. It's a beautiful weather, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. What's up? Well, you got to wear the white socks up to your knees.
You guys should read some of the comments. I
You
mean,
know-
it's interesting. Some of the participants, said rest in power, Nacho, and people were saying with socks. So I think people are with you. It's unfortunate that in this format, you can't really see the chat, but they're interacting with you and are very thankful for all of you sharing your story. So when you get a chime, I'll try to save this so you can see some of the stuff that people are saying.
Yeah, definitely. They could be saved. This is like the WWE. Dr. Danico and I were tag teaming here for the Lucha Libre. Hector has a powerful story. He's an open book, and I'm working with him now to write his biography. And I think Ismael should do likewise, and I'll work with him equally, especially since he's my brother. I get 20% on both. Business is business, people. And I think it's important that these stories are told, and they're honest and they're from the heart. And there's no competition here. There's no like, oh, you did this, or I had it worse. There's nothing good about experiencing violence. There's nothing romantic about being abandoned. There's nothing romantic about inflicting pain on others, especially when those others look like you. So I think that's important to know. So I think the fact that they're opening up, they're doing it for us and for our youth, especially especially our males that are in trouble today. So I wanted to ask, I'm gonna change the order here. Ask Hector first, and then Ismael, the importance of trust in the Vario. I mean, why is trust so important, especially in the type of work that you do? And then when that trust is violated, what does that do with your relationship with the people in terms of you working with them? And then when trust is violated among themselves. So I'll start with Hector and then go with Ismael.
Sure. So trust in the barrio is, how could I say? You can act like, your homies are your homies, and there's friends and then there's homeboys. You can trust certain amount, but when you grow up the way we grew up, in my opinion, is you really don't trust nobody. You really you pay attention to the only one that I trust fully is my twin brother. Everybody else, from your clique, it just keeps going from your clique. Your clique is the brothers that you kind of grew up with. They're in your generation, and then outside of that, you have other cliques, and usually, like where we grew up in Ramona Gardens, they're from other generations, a little bit older and older and older. And I could say that I know a lot of my older homeboys. I grew up with a lot of my older homeboys. From me being, you guys wouldn't understand this, but like a TL, Tiny Locos, Condors, Dukes, Night Owls, Jokers, and it just gets older and older. And when you were born and raised in Ramona Gardens, you know all the generations. So and they know you, especially my twin brother and I, because we had family from the neighborhood. We're the twins, so as a child, they used to wake us up in the middle of the night to go pop locking in front of all these cholos and stuff, So, but one of my first lessons was when I first started selling. I remember selling PCP in the projects, and so I got my bottle. It's a little bottle about this big. You get what they call a 50 pour, so it's about half of the bottle. You dip a cigarette for PCP and you sell it for $10. Now, I got my bottle. I was rolling around the neighborhood, selling PCP. One of my older homeboys said, oh, what's up? What then? Hey, what's up? And he goes, you're selling now, huh? I said, yeah. And I was thinking, why is he questioning me? Because I'm already from the neighborhood. He shouldn't question me, but I know this older dude. He knows me. And he goes, let me see what you got. So I show my bottle, but you hold it the way you hold it. You hold it and you flick it like, what's up? And he goes, let me see it. Why do you want to see my bottle? And he goes, and he kind of like, why are you not showing me your bottle? Why would you not show me your bottle? So he's questioning my questioning. And I'm like, he goes, and I pulled back, this is my bottle, huh? You know what I mean? Like, you have your own bottle, you get your own stuff. And he goes, hey dog, if I just want to see your bottle, let me see your bottle. I've been busting with your uncle, you know, poop. And so he pulled all these psychological things on me, you know, to show trust. And I was like, am I tripping? Am I supposed to trust like this? My instincts say no, but he's pulling family ties and all this stuff. So I said, here, look at the bottle. So he grabs the bottle, same way. And then he shoots it back to me. He says, that's it. Just wanted to see what you got on me. What I did. Boom. So I jam. I sell my next PCP cigarette. And then my customer comes back and says, hey, dude, what, you trying to burn me? And I go, burn you? And he goes, you just sold me a cigarette, doc. You just sold me this dipper or whatever we called it back in the days, frio. And I look, and so I get it and I smell it. Then I go to my bottle. I smell my bottle and it doesn't have the really distinct smell of PCP. And then I said, oh shit, burn me. And I was like, motherfucker, excuse my language. Like, he burned me after he pulled all those, after we did this little fight. And I said, okay, first lesson, fuck everybody, even my homeboys. Like, you know, like, no one's on my side. I'm going to be in here. I'm not going to give up. Oh, I'm not going to sell no more. Fuck these guys. I'm not going to go back. And it's just lesson number one. Don't trust nobody, period. Okay. So, you know, I made my way to deal with the situation. And then, you know, but that was a huge thing. So trust. You trust, can I trust my mom? You know, from not saying she's going to go to the store and she doesn't come back for a week. Can I trust my homeboy who says, dude, like, it's me. I'm busted with your people. I know everybody. I know all your aunts and uncles. Okay, cool. Here, boom, I got burnt. Oh shit, trust. Completely off the table in my eyes. So I could trust, you know, to a certain extent, you know what I mean? If I go with my group of people and we go to the store, and I should be able to trust that if we get into some stuff, I trust that you're going to jump in. But it doesn't matter because I have to do what I have to do. And this is only on me. I gotta take care of my business. And I'm expecting this. And if you don't, there will be consequences. So that's trust on the street side. You get trust in Homeboy Industries. I've got to deal with me coming in to Homeboy Industries who knows that I don't trust nobody. How can I trust you to help me? And the only way that that's going to happen is if I stick with you and I walk with you through this process as best as I can. And I have to ask for wisdom every day when I come in, that the relationship is built, and it's built on trust. Whether you're brown, whether you're black, whether you're from my enemy's barrio, because you probably did your make on me and you know where I grew up at, and you probably think, and I get this all the time, oh, it's because I'm from this and that. And you have to stick to, absolutely not. I could give two shits about that. You know, my thing is to walk with you through this process. And if you want it, let's walk together. And if you don't want it, then you're gonna prove that you don't want it by not allowing yourself. And then you're gonna go back to the same shit you just came from. So you made the choice to come over here. Please, let's walk together through this. And then you will give me your experiences and I'll give you mine. And you will say, oh shit, like, we're together in this. Excuse my language, you guys. It's a little rough. So, but you know, this is where, yeah.
There's nothing to excuse. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all adults here. And if you would try to use language that's not from the streets, then we shouldn't be having this conversation. So you should just delete or exit this conversation. I believe in free speech, and I believe that people should speak from where they come from, their experience. At the end of the day, violence is violence. If we have kids in the border that are being put in cages, then this language is nothing compared to what's happening in our country.
Hey, Alvaro, a lot of the folks on the chat wanted us to ask this one question from Andrea. And what she's asking is, how do y'all deal with the politics with working with gang-affiliated youth, especially when you're working with opposing rivals? What are y'all's thoughts on politicizing young people to redirect young people's hurt towards self-empowerment and not self plus community destruction? And several of the folks really felt that that was an important question. So how do y'all deal with the politics with working with gang-affiliated youth, especially when you're working with opposing rivals? What are your thoughts on politicizing young people to redirect young people's hurt towards self-empowerment and not self plus community destruction?
Yeah,
That's a big question.
Yeah, she's getting a lot of support. So let's start with Ismael, and then we'll go with Hector.
I think it's a big question. I don't know if I can put it in a nutshell, but I think for me personally, when I first started my job here at the schools, for a whole year, I just listened to these kids. And I work in 7 different sites. I started working with 133 students. And I remember reporting back to the district. I had 2 board members, an officer, probation officer, 2 principals, a social worker, a therapist, a community service provider, my supervisor. And I remember them telling me, Ismael, you gotta cut it down to like 24 students. 133 is too much. And I remember telling them, well, you're telling me this for 2 weeks I've been building this relation with the kids, and now you're telling me to go back and end this? I'm like, nah. So this is gonna take some time. It's a year contract. If you guys don't like in a year, you guys can fire me. And so with a lot of students that I met along the way, a couple of them didn't trust me. They didn't know me, who I am. I'm from LA, so they're like, well, you're from LA, they have a negative image of LA folks. I say, yeah, I'm from LA, but I don't represent LA. I represent myself. And I made it clear to them, I'm representing myself as a Chicano brother and as a male into your space. And I said, you guys should start questioning why you're in my classroom. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, you guys been labeled as gang members. And within seconds, one group of students verbally started attacking each other. And I stopped them real quick. And I said, you know what? It's interesting how you guys are arguing with each other, but not really questioning who's labeling you. And then one of the kids in the background said, man, that's deep. And I said, look, bro, you guys are pretty much following a pattern that's pretty much going to leave you locked up or 6 feet under or kicked out of school. And so I don't do favoritism in those schools. I'm with you in one classroom. I'm present with one school. And so wherever I'm at in a classroom, I'm focused. And whatever we talk about in that classroom, it's in that classroom. It doesn't go outside that classroom. So my focus is personal development, teaching them their how to become young men and understand the politics of the street politics, actually. I call it streetology-based teaching from what I learned from the streets and I learned from the schools, and understanding their true selves. And so I don't really get into the politics in that sense. I don't play that game. I'm more focused. I lead with my heart and listen with my heart. And so that approach is a little bit different. I don't believe in territorial because I'm a grown man in the space now, in their space, in their territorial space, which to me, it's a very sacred space. And so I make them think a little bit different of their environment. And I ask them, look at your environment. Why is there a liquor store in your neighborhood? Why is there older homeboys falling through the cracks? Why is your family struggling? Why do you live in an area where you can barely make and you can barely eat? And so I focus on that more, not the politics. To me, those are like politics. I don't play the game in that. And so my space is very sacred, what I have with my students. And I meet some of my students in elementary. I follow them all the way through high school. I've been to their bautismo, like their kids' baptism, their quinceañeras after. I really focus on that. And so I really don't get into this whole the politics that people play, because I think it's a yin-yang mindset. I focus on one thing only, is to uplift these young men and women. I have a few young women in my space, and I'm happy to say, and I say with full pride, I got 6 of my students that were all into the neighborhood. Now they're in college. One pre-med, one is a sociology major, one is a history major, one is a math major. And so to me, I don't play the game. I don't get into the politics game. I really focus on what I have in front of me. But I do teach them reality, what's out there in the adult world, because the problem right now that I'm seeing, it's adults versus youngsters, and that's a problem, and that needs to change, because to me that's a kinship that's been broken. And I think with the work that I do and with the work that Hector does, it's a kinship right there, building that relationship through the older homeboys that have been through life and the homegirls that have been through life, and teaching the youngsters how to understand and say, look, I'm a reflection of you if you take this path. And so I'm giving you some food for thought to open your corazon and your mind and understand your Vario. This is not the way you're supposed to be. You need to change the system and be a role model in your community. So for that question of politics, that's a personal thing that you have to kind of view it. But I would love to have a plática with you, that individual, whoever it is, after, and walk into my world and meet my students and have a plática on that.
For sure, Ismael. I'll see you in Santa Barbara.
Órale pues, pinche Amy.
Yeah, I know.
6 in the morning, girl. 6 in the morning.
I know.
Hiking.
But the thing that well, thank you for like answering part of the question. But the reason why I was asking all that was because, you know, like I work with I'm also in Santa Barbara with Ismael, but I work on the other side of town. You know, so it's like interesting to see how, you know, even if we have a certain political consciousness around rivalry between, and you know, in this case in Santa Barbara, like brown on brown rival gangs or whatever, like it's a real reality for them, right? And so it's like, you know, for you, man, you and I have talked about this, about like, yeah, you know, in your space, you let them know what's up, and you let them know that straight off the bat, you're not going to engage in the politics, the game politics in the community, because you're just trying to help them see something different for themselves. But like my concern is that a lot of the little homies, they're not there yet, right? But they're still going to be out in the community. So how do we reach those kids that don't want help and or don't think that they need it? Right? Because they're still going to be out in the community.
So the solution to that, Amy, is the older homeboys and the older homegirls in the neighborhood, collaborating with those folks that actually want to give their time and energy to the youngsters, because the solution is a community. I'm only one person in the entire district, 17,000 kids. So there's so much that I can do. In the past, I did work with the older homeboys back in the day, from both Varios, actually 3 Varios, and it was good. But unfortunately, some of the homeboys were caught up. They picked up a case, so my connection's a little bit different with them. But I do believe that the solution's in the community, and I believe with the universities here and our schools, bridging that relationship, and a person like yourself, that can make a big impact. But it doesn't take one person, it takes a whole community to do that.
So I want to thank Andrea for that, and I think we can recruit her for the Latina version of this talk.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think that
she's awesome, by the way.
Given that the wise Latina is wiser than the male, then we can have a better conversation. Hector, so how do you deal with the politics of different gang affiliations coming into homeboy industries? And I know this is real for both of you. So how does that work there?
Sure. So, you know, I'm fortunate and honored to be able to sit in Father Greg's desk whenever he's not in. That's a lot of the time. And so in that seat, I'm one of the guys that accept the brothers and sisters that are coming in that want to be a part of the program. And, you know, of course, mainly gang members. Now, when gang members come in and they say, like, look, I want something better for my life. So there's a few things right there. Is nobody's court ordered to be at Homeboy Industries, and people they come because they want to come to Homeboy Industries. Homeboy has been around for 32 plus years, and you know, the reputation is, if you want help as a gang member or someone coming out of prison, go to Homeboy, go talk to Father Greg, go talk to the guys over there, and more than likely they're going to help you. So when they come with the attitude of, I need help. And sometimes they're strung out on drugs. Sometimes they're just they just look and they come in, they're mad dogging, they're the whole shebang. And you know, it's important every step into Homeboys. Once you step in, every step of getting to where I'm at, whether it be the people that are greeting you and in the front desk, to the brothers and sisters that are around, all make a difference. It's a culture shock when if you're from LA and you're involved in gangs and you look inside and you see, ain't that so and so from that barrio? Why is he talking to so and so from that barrio? Why is this Chicano talking to this black, embracing, hugging, and it's kind of like, okay, what is going on here? So that's before you even come into, you know, Father Greg's office. And then when we have the conversation, and you're saying, look, my life is in shambles, my life sucks, and we just start opening up certain the conversation, you know, and a gang member says, I want to be right here, and I said, well, what neighborhood are we from? And they would say it, and I would say, we have all your enemies right here, bing, bam, boom, boom, and then they'll be, I go, is that cool with you? And then there's a few, you know, there's a couple of answers to that. One of them is, oh, I don't give a shit who's here, you know, like I don't play that. Feed, man, come on in, brother. Or it's, you know, yeah, dog. As long as they don't tell me nothing, I'm not going to tell them nothing. And that's pretty much the ages as you get younger and younger, you know. Oh yeah, all right, well, cool. As long as you don't. You know, we don't play that gang stuff here, bro. You know what I mean? And if you could keep your hands to yourself and play well with others, that's Father Greg's sayings, then we'd be happy to have you here. And then, you know, so then that will, and that's part of the plan is where you know, two bakers, two gang members side by side, rolling up bread, you know, you're kind of forced to kind of, so what's up, dog? You know what I mean? Like you're forced to create relationship, and it's all about relationship at Homeboy. Now, once in a while, you know, I have to pay attention to what gangs are in Homeboys, and how many of those gang members are from the same gang. Because there's a tendency of, if I start getting more of my Homeboys, I start to put my chest up a little more. So I have to pay attention to that number. And I've been there where, you know, one gang has gotten too deep, and I have to make sure, like, you know, I have to start separating on a, you know, I need to get this guy and put him in the bakery. I need to get that guy, put him in City Hall, and move things around before it starts getting too rough, I guess you could say, you know. So, you know, these are how I deal with some of the gang politics. I don't, you know, most people think like, how are you dealing with gang members? Don't the gangs get mad? Don't they, you know, you're taking away their I don't know, soldiers, if you will, you know? And it's like, not really. Most of the time gang members come here and then they go back to their barrios and they're like, you know, how come you're not kicking it, dog? Oh, it's because I work now, I have a job. Who hired you? You know, it's Homeboy Industries. They'll hire anybody, dog. You know, and then usually what ends up happening is they start to bring some of their friends in. And, you know, I and a team of us pay attention on how we make sure that those politics don't get thick. They don't, you know, we have our ears to the ground. We have a security team inside and outside. I could explain that if you really want me to explain that. But more importantly than anything is the message of love, the message of kinship and of peace that we all are a part of, and that we all step in. And trainees themselves will step in and say, we don't do that here, dog. What are you doing trying to write on the walls? We don't do that. And it's not like the boss or something like that, you know, is that we all participate in this kinship world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's a very important point, and I think
Can I add something, Alvaro?
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
think it's important. I think
Sure,
it's
sure.
important to understand if you've never been in gangs, it's kind of hard to understand the gang politics. It's based a lot on fear and respect and a lot of ego, and especially with young men, especially when young men are still trying to figure themselves out, sense of belonging to something. And so when an outsider comes in and the kids don't understand this person, like, oh, you're weird, you're showing me love that I've never felt before. So it's kind of an awkward moment. But when they get to know you, they see you, and then they get to see that you see them, and then they open up their heart, and then they take the mask off. You know, I had the opportunity to take a lot of students hiking. I love nature. I take my students hiking and teach them how to jump in the cold water for 20 minutes, and the water's like probably 50 degrees, and they take the mask off. You know, the first few minutes, these kids are talking about people they fought, homegirls they hooked up with, or one time they got locked up, or homeboys they fought in their own neighborhood. And that, I love it because I see them in their mascara, but after the hike's over, that mask is gone, and I see them in their light. And that's when they see me. It's like, Ismael, I appreciate this. And I remember this one kid could not jump in the water because he had an EM monitor. He was on probation, and he just sucked. Like, everyone jumped in the water, and he couldn't jump in the water. And the homeboys were calling him out. He's like, I'm not a punk fool, but if I wet this, I got to pay $500 to probation. And he told me, like, on the side, he says, Ismael, I'm going to work really hard to do good and get out probation, but I want to come back here and jump in that water. And I think that people have to understand that these young minds, that's their world right now. That's what they see. And we as adults have to show them a different light. And by showing them a different light, it can be humble industry, it can be universities, it can be conferences, for them to see unique people. You know, I noticed my brother Juan Santos logged in. I had him speak at conferences, and he speaks from the truth. You know, Hector spoke to a lot of my students, and a bunch of other homeboys that spoke to my students. And I want the youngsters to see themselves, because with homeboys all tatted up and they're professors, they're like, damn, this guy's a professor. Say, hey, dog, you can still be in the neighborhood, but be a smart homeboy. Understand the game in the neighborhood. But it's really hard for outsiders to understand the politics in the game, because it is a trick game. It is a politic game. And if you don't get it, you're never going to understand it. And I think it's important for people to know, like, if you come from a good place and you devote your life to young folks, but at the same time, devote your life to helping adults, the parents, the root is the parents. It's a triangle effect. You have the parents and yourself and the kids up here. You got to uplift that kid, but you got to go back and not look at it as a gang thing. You got to look at it as a trauma problem. We have a trauma crisis going on right now. And that's how I look at it. I don't look at it as a gang problem. I look at it as trauma. And to me, what I didn't share with you guys earlier, for the past 8.5 years, I brought in meditation and Tai Chi into my teachings, because it focuses on trauma, you know? And I think by doing something like that, it's different. It really opens up the guy's third eye up here, and for them to understand, like, there's bigger than their environment, and from them seeing the block. And so when I take the kids to homeboys, they see, like, oh shit, there's enemies hanging out together. There's enemies eating together. So this is possible, because when you're young, you don't see that possibility. That's what I love, that connection that I have with homeboy industry, because they see the opportunity that they're never going to see. And that's why it's important for a person like myself, and for those that want to dedicate themselves to helping young folks, expose young people to another world besides the block. And I guarantee you, you would reduce the youth violence in the neighborhood.
So gracias, Ismael and Hector. We have about 16 minutes left. I think I don't really believe in role models or anything like that. I'm too old for that.
Yeah, because you're not my role model, cabrón.
Yeah.
This is my brother.
Yeah, I don't believe in any of that stuff. But if I were to have one, apart from my wife, is great Father Boyle. And I think one thing he teaches us is this idea of kinship that Hector mentioned and Ismael mentioned, and that kinship is what brings us together. And at the end of the day, we have more in common than different, except for the Orange Man and the White House. So we have, what brings us together are experiences, especially those of us who grew up on the streets. We really have more in common. And when we're fighting ourselves, when we're killing ourselves, we're committing suicide. We're literally killing the people that look like us. and the mothers and fathers and guardians that suffer as a result of that. So we need to break away from that. So I want to ask, I'll start with Ismael this time and then go with Hector, is what do you see when people feel pain? And I know both of you have experienced pain more than I have, but what do you see in terms of healing practices, whether they're spiritual or they're religious, in terms of helping young people or older people too, overcome some of that pain and suffering and transform it into a healing and a self-awareness of whatever they experience is not their fault. And how is it that they can become from being victims to survivors, and then from survivors to agents of social change? So I'll start with Ismael and then go with Hector.
I think for me, I tell my students and presenters, people when I present to, I want you to look at your past as your toolbox, not so much as your weight that drags you. I believe that one is to recognize your trauma first and to focus on healing. And it's not easy. It's gonna take some time, and it can be a long journey. You know, I have some kids that have been through some crazy shit that I've never experienced, and it heartbreaks me. But I show them that, hey, let's work in this path, and let's work step by step and how to focus on that and how to forgive and move forward. It's not an easy task, but I do believe, for me specifically, is just I'm always on that path of sharing what I've learned through my own personal experience and teaching young folks, like, do what makes you happy and learn how to forgive and not carry that pain, because that can be detrimental long-term, you know, especially in relationships. You know, if you grew up in an abusive home, study shows you repeat that cycle, you know, and to me it's like, be a game changer, break that cycle. And it's unfortunate for me because I'm in a classroom once a week for like 55 minutes. I don't have the kids every day. And so when I have 7 groups, which is over 100 and something kids, I just have those 55 minutes of just straight being present with the kids. And that can be very challenging. And sometimes it is. And sometimes it's a beautiful thing. But one of my students has told me, you know, Ismael, you talk about college and you talk about higher education. I'm sorry, dog, but I don't see that shit. I can barely see the block. My mom's getting evicted. My brother got deported. And I'm all fucked up right now, dog. And I don't know what to do. And this is in a large group of kids, and he's crying. And I'm just like, oh, shit. I'm not a therapist. But I do believe, living 47 years in this planet, I have a wealth of knowledge. And so what I've done is just listen to him, spend time with him, talk to his mom, talk to his brother, and just really take those steps, you know, and making them understand it's not your fault, bro. And you're going to be all right. But just surround yourself with good people. And if it's not those around you, then make some other friends and hopefully you find some adults that can guide you along the way, including myself. And I'm open. You know, I'm always, my phone's always online with these cats. And so I think just focusing on that and paying it forward and being open-minded and truly believe in the kinship. You know, I'm responsible for these youngsters in my classroom, and I love them like my own children, and they know that. They know I care a lot about them. And so just being that perfect, not perfect, but that good image of a male role model in their life. Even with the young women in my class, you know, same thing as well. That's my approach.
Gracias, Ismael. And if someone, Jessica, asked a question about your healing session, so maybe, well, I think they can just respond to me and then I'll refer you to Ismael because he's in his phone. Hector?
So when I think about healing, I'm thinking, you know, I just kind of think about like the pain that I think about myself as I could be able to relate to others. I think about the pain that you carry throughout your life, and that pain becomes normal. It's a normal, and you surrounded, you know, as that pain comes out, you transmit your pain to people around you, whether it even be with family or you know, I mean, you could be in the barrio and you don't get along with that clique and all that stuff, and then there's outside of the barrio and there's that gang, and then you know, then you end up getting along because you're all in prison. Now we got to go against this gang that's in Northern California or whatever. So that it's like a normal type of thing to carry. You get used to carrying that pain until your spirit, however that God does this, so your spirit starts to call and says, I want something different. Give me something different. And so we find that where people come to Homeboy Industries. And then, we're so fortunate to have Father Greg to teach us about pain, about healing, about there's no way around it, Hector. There's no way around your pain. Then what do? You have to go through your pain. And so I started to feel that, like, I gotta go through my pain. And then as I'm writing about my life for the first time in my life and started to choke up, you're like, I'm an adult, I've been through the worst things, not the worst, but pretty bad stuff. And then you start to, you continue to write, and then you like, oh, why am I getting emotional? What the fuck? What's going on here? So then there's no way around the pain. It's only through the pain. Fuck it. I'm just going to keep writing. And when tears just roll down my face, then I'm going to allow it to happen. And then when I'm wailing, crying, because I'm thinking of that child going through all the stuff that's not normal for a child to go through. Now I'm releasing that pain. All this time I've been stuffing that pain down, and then and again in stuffing that pain down, I'm transmitting it to anybody who even looks at me wrong. And now I'm releasing it. Thank God. And then it doesn't stop there. It just keeps going and going. You carry so much, and as there's the different tactics of releasing your pain and healing, whether it be writing it on a piece of paper, or telling your therapist about this stuff, or talking to my peers as we're in circle together, and when it's sacred circle that we get to see, like, fuck, you went through that too, dog. And then we get to cry together and be together, and all we're doing is just letting out. And if you think back in your life, when did I ever have the chance to do something like this? Like in juvenile hall, maybe I'll let out a cry. I can't remember, but I'm not trying to act like a tough guy. But maybe I did. In prison, absolutely not. I'm already hardened by that time, So, and with your homeboys, I remember being the ear for a lot of people, listening and stuff, but again, if you remember my trust piece, I don't trust nobody, so they're not worthy to hear my inside thoughts. So finally, we get to a place where it's sacred enough to allow your damaged heart to be repaired through this community of healing, and watch this first a release, and then watch this the self-love start to happen. And when that starts to happen, the world changes around you. You'll see it immediately with whoever's inside your home. Your home might even leave you because they can't handle it. But if your children, who got no choice but to be there, they're going to take this love. They're going to see the difference. And in right then and there, you're changing the generational curse. And then watch this ripple effect just flow through your family, your friends. And then watch what happens when people say, I want what you're having. How do I get to that? And then you're able to dare I say, lead a path of healing. But if I'm doing it and you want it and you see that it's making a big difference in my life, I'll be damned if I'm not going to show you the way. And so you come over here.
So I really,
That's why I think it's,
go ahead, Ismail.
I think that's why it's important for my students to go to Homeboys and hear that, because they see it, they hear it from adults. These little youngsters they don't hear it from home, they don't hear it in their environment. That's why it's beautiful to have this relationship, collaboration with Homeboy Industry. It really is, it's so powerful. You know, hearing Hector say what he's saying, and I truly 100% agree with him, because youngsters need to see that it is possible to heal, but you do have to go through it, and don't carry that as you get older, because it just escalates with more and more. So I thank you, brother, for sharing that, man.
You, my brother.
Yeah, I think what's important with both Hector and Ismael, and they both have different styles. And once you hear them, you'll see that there's a lot of in common, but there's also some differences too in terms of the different levels of trauma. For me, it's not a competition, and a lot of times we feel that, like in the Vario, there's like, okay, you know, like who had it worst and they have more stripes, or who's tougher, they have more stripes. That's a losing proposition at the end of the day. And if you do open up and if you do cry in the Vario, that's a sign of weakness. And then people that will take advantage of that will prey on you. But that's not even an option when it comes to the streets or the prisons that both of them have experienced in different degrees. So I think for me, it's important to see and talk to people without judgment. Without judgment. This country judges too much. And always when people open up, they see it as a sign of weakness. But there's no weakness here, there's only strength. So when you hear love for the first time, it's like love is a weakness, but at the end of the day, love is a strength, is what brings us together. And if our fathers and guardians never said that I love you, we have to break the cycle at one point. Mm-hmm. Right? Because my father never told us he loved us, but we have to break the cycle in terms of telling that to show love and to express love, unlike the orange man in the White House, that's not a sign of strength, that's a sign of weakness when you don't do it. You know, if you want to be tough, you want to talk tough about putting kids in cages, come to Ramona Gardens and see what happens to you. Because that's what it comes down to. So at the end of the day, these two individuals have been tested more than anybody can imagine, but there is no glory in that. There's no romanticism in that, because that only brings pain. So the fact that they're sharing, they're opening our hearts to us, and I know some of you have experienced this similarly that are watching, it's okay to open up. It's okay to cry, because that's only human. And those that have dehumanized us, they themselves have dehumanized themselves in the process. So we cannot be like them. When we start fighting for neighborhoods that we don't even own, you know, who's winning and who's losing? There's west side, south side, east side, south side, north side. It's a losing proposition for us, Black and brown people. We need to get away from that and go back to this kinship that Father Boyle talks about. And at the end of the day, we have more in common than we have in difference. And so to me, when I hear Hector speak and Ismael speak, you know, they're speaking from the heart. They're not here because of any other reason, because I asked them to, and because they want to share their story so that others that are experiencing that or went through that, they can relate to that, but also can share it. And also because at the end of the day, when you're in the neighborhood, there's rules and there's conduct. And no motivational speak is going to change that. No stupid Nancy Reagan, just say no, is going to change that. At the end of the day, the pressures of the hood and the barrio are stronger than any words. So sometimes we have to take homeboys out of the neighborhood to get them out. But because we don't have the wherewithal to do that, it's not a coincidence why that cycle doesn't continue. But at the end of the day, the cycle is not us. It's the oppressive system that benefits from having Black and brown people kill themselves. Brown versus brown kill themselves. And who's tougher? That's a losing proposition. So I love the stories of Hector and Ismael, and I promise both of them, especially Hector, that speaks out a little bit more publicly, that support them to write their books and see their stories in the books and the movies, so they show the real truth to that. For the last 30 years, Father Bo has been working on the margins, but Hector and Ismael lived in the margins. So white privilege allows you to exit, but for brown and black people, there is no exit, people. So at the end of the day, it's about us opening up, and whatever privilege we garner through our journey, that we have to give back. So to me, that's what it's about. So for me, that's what it's about. You know, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in the big hazard housing projects, but I was never in the gang, and I never claimed to be in the gang. But I'm proud to have grown up there, and I'm sad to hear when I was growing up, my homeboys and homegirls that I grew up with that died, went to prison, that never lived past 17, that they're not with me today to share their stories. The homeboys and homegirls that Hector and Ismael grew up with, they're not here with us. But to me, it's I see when I go to meetings and they talk about there's no heroes in the Latino community, it's like, speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. You're looking at one right here. You're looking at one right here with Hector, with Ismael, and the wise Latinas in our communities, our mothers that lead the way. So I just want to close with this. I want to dedicate this webinar to my brother, Noel Huerta, who's not with us today because of the traumas that he experienced growing up in the projects. So to me, it doesn't matter. I received the best degrees in the world, UCLA, UC Berkeley, at the highest levels. And I will give them away or tear them up to have my brother back. And it's because of him, the people that experience pain and suffering in their bodies, and our kids in cages because this orange man in the White House are suffering today, that I speak and I fight, and nobody can quiet me, and nothing can happen to me. The worst that the orange man in the White House could do to me, a skinny Mexican from the projects with illiterate parents, the PhD from UC Berkeley, the only thing they can do to me is deport me back to East LA. And with that, muchas gracias, and I want to pass it back to Dr. Danico.
If I can ask all of you to unmute temporarily just to give our wonderful speakers, this incredible panel, a round of applause. It's so hard, but when we're so far away. Yeah, I mean, I think it's so hard when we have this virtual reality to kind of, see people's faces as you're speaking, but all of you really touched the attendees today. You really connected. I want to really thank you from the bottom of my heart. Alvaro and Esmael, so sorry for your loss with your brother, and I'm sure, he's looking and very, very proud of all the work. Hector, I think we met years ago at Homeboy Enterprise, and your life journey just inspires and amazes everyone. I I think this was a wonderful way to start our social justice series. But I also want to invite all of you, who I know many had to leave. We had about 130 people, and I think there's still 90 of you still here. So thank you. But I did want to invite this community to share insight. And I think Jonathan was sharing some things that he thought folks might, benefit from based on what Hector and Ishmael said. And so I messaged him and said, hey, would you mind just announcing at the end? Because we had so many chats. And I think it's just kind of opportunities and programs for people. So Jonathan, if you could just make that announcement, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your stories. It resonates tough for me. Education was an opportunity for me to make it out. I was facing life in prison when I was 16. Honestly, I started reading books and trying to do, high school diplomas and everything, just, as like an escape, as a mental escape. But believe it or not, after, coming home and doing whatever time, I held on to that education thing. So regardless of the fact, whatever somebody's doing it for, whether it's a personal passion or just to get out of the hood, because trust me, a lot of people use that reason too. Education is there for that. But a lot of people don't think that they can because they've never seen anybody else do it. I'm first generation myself. So trust me, there's a lot of people, Professor even explain, just, where he's from, he had no reason to get to where he's at, so it just goes to show you that it is an opportunity. Underground Scholars is part of the UC system. I was a transfer from community college, and trust me, like, they want to do everything in their power to get you from this whole prison to school pipeline. So if you know anybody who may have that potential and just, has been considering it, but maybe doesn't want to because they've never seen anybody else do it, introduce them to people. I had to meet a lot of homies who same story as mine, for me to realize that I can make it to a UC someday, or I can, and you know what? I mean, again, sometimes it doesn't even seem real, but it is real for a lot of people. And I want you to know that anybody, any loved ones, you don't even got to be formally incarcerated. System impacted. There's studies that show that people who have loved ones who are doing time, they have the exact same traumas, that, kind of like reflect. And I don't want to say this is for sure. This is just what I've read, and this is why they have system impacted included in Underground Scholars, Project Rebound at the state level, or even Rising Scholars at the community college level where I started. And I didn't know about these until afterwards, but I'm letting people know that, they don't got to do it the hard way. There's a lot of resources out there for y'all. So I sent an email with just as much information as I can give in this short time, but I hope you guys can consider it. Anybody whether yourself or anyone, school is not hard, and they're making it way easier for people like us, because evidently, the education system is meant for a certain specific demographic that doesn't include us. It actually excludes us. So they're figuring out ways to help decrease that prison to school pipeline.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I think, one of the advantages of having these kind of virtual sessions too is for us to build community. And I asked Alvaro if maybe, the speakers would be willing to stay a little bit, and just like we would if we were in a real physical face-to-face space, you would be going up to them and asking questions. So I just kind of want to offer that opportunity that I think it was so inspiring, so touching. And I think the whole notion of trauma and healing really resonated for so many here, but also in terms of move to action. And, again, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it up to our awesome moderator and speakers. And if the attendees want to connect, I'm going to leave it up to you to figure out how you want. So I'm going to leave this open, and I'll watch from my screen over here. So thank you all for coming. The next one will be this Friday, actually, with Dr. Anthony Ocampo. He's going to be talking in recognition of Filipino Heritage Month, and the notion of it from his book, Why Filipinos Are Perceived the Latinos of Asia. So it should be a really interesting conversation as well. But thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you at the future events.
Thank you so much.
You could just unmute yourself too.
I had a question for I don't remember his name. You were like explaining about like the whole story. I don't see a lot of names. I don't see the names here. Oh, Hector, sorry. Hector. I wanted to ask you, like, you talked a lot about like trust, and like how did you learn to trust like your own people? So because like what I'm coming from is like obviously like I've been around like my own people my life, and like I've like started to realize that, oh, there's like an echo, but I've started to realize that like a lot of the people, like for example, like a lot of the people who wronged you, did you start to feel like, oh, like those were my own people hurting me, and then like, so then growing up as like a minority nowadays, like obviously like, the popular opinion is that, you know, we need more representation of minorities and things like that. So um like how do you kind of like, because then that kind of turns into like this feeling of like unpopular opinion, like isolation, that you're frustrated with your own people even though the rest of the country is actually starting to actually appreciate your people, but you know like what your own people have done to you. Like how do you overcome that frustration, like, you know, kind of get past like that, like get into like that state of trust again?
Cool. So I don't. For me, I don't think about like, okay, my people, or if I'm like segregating like lines around, you know, Chicanos and whites and every, you know, racism and all that stuff like that. I don't even trip on that. I feel like the people that you're around, the people that are in your circle of trust, are the, you know, the vibration that you put out, are the vibration that you know, that's coming back to you. I pay attention to who's around me. You know, you know, I look at like, I don't know, I'm weird, but I think like, okay, you know, who is my girl at the time? You know, so my girl's most intimate person that's near me. Who is she? Is she still out there partying and stuff? Is she doing this? Is she doing that? And I feel like that's the reflection of me. And then you look at your crowd on who you're kicking it with. They're the reflection of me. Are they thriving? Do they want more for themselves? Are they, you know? So and it doesn't matter. It goes, humans are humans, in my opinion. And again, you put me with family, you know, and you know, there's family members where I can only take, you know, so much, and because they're family, I'd be in their circle, but I got to leave, you know. So I don't know if that answers your question. You know, for me, it's just I build trust with the people that are I don't know. I don't know how to even explain it right now. I think I'm explaining it right, but if I get too into it, it's gonna sound kind of weird.
But Ismail, how do you deal with issues of trust?
Uh-huh. I think I surround myself with good people and keep my distance from people that I don't trust. I think when you grow up in the neighborhood, you get to read body language pretty quick, and then sometimes your friends you get trust. You know, you got it's like your friendship gets tested amongst other people around you. So I think as I got older, I became wiser, and I eliminate certain people that I don't want around me. And so, you know, unfortunately, there's people that I know that I don't trust at all, and there's people that I work towards trying to see if I can trust them. So it's a yin and yang. You just got to be true to yourself and surround yourself with good folks. And like what Hector said, there's people around you that you don't even know them as well. You know, amongst even with family members, where you feel, if you feel that safe space, and I think that's something personal you got to deal with and go through it. But I think it's an internal thing with yourself, and I think it has a lot to do with the self-love, self-care, self-awareness, and self-agency, and reflect that towards other people around you. And when they see that light in you, they kind of, wow, you can see it. You know what I mean? And so I'm an introvert and an extrovert, so I'm able to do both. So which is a plus for me personally. But you know, I work in a big district with a lot of people, and there's some people I work really well with, and there's some people I don't. Some people trust me, some people don't. And I've learned how to play the chess game. So it's just kind of like you have to maneuver through all that. As long as I'm true to myself, I'm good.
Anybody else? Any open questions?
Oh yeah, so I'm sorry, go on, you go first. I don't mind.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Corina.
Hi, well, first of all, I wanted to thank you guys for such an amazing conversation. I mean, just listening to your guys' stories, I grew up around your area. I'm from the Pasadena area, so I know a little bit about what's happening. And I'm sorry, a lot of my work actually revolves from a philosophical standpoint, you know, of the different ways that systems of power and structures construct, you know, masculinity and also construct Latino male oppression. So a lot of what I do is looking at structures such as like immigration or even police, you know, systematically targeting Latino men. I kind of wanted your opinion on that. And I also had another question kind of tangential with that. Considering everything that we know that is happening with LASD, specifically in East LA with gangs in the actual department, targeting Latino men and also having Latino men be complicit with that. Like, how can you resist that? How can you reform that? Like, what can we do?
So let's start with Ismael and then Hector.
That's a big question. There's a lot of good questions coming up. I think there's specifically speaking as a male, we need to create a space for young men to find themselves and find their purpose. Unfortunately, and even at the law enforcement and any occupation that men hold, a lot of men carry a lot of pain in themselves. I know when Hector mentioned a lot of youngsters, you know, even my students, they go through the rite of passage through the juvenile system, and that needs to stop. I think we need to create a space to go to rite of passage, an indigenous space for young men and women to go through the rite of passage to change this broken path that men have trust issues and women have trust issues regarding men as well. So it's a very unhealthy relationship that has to be rebuilt to a healthy relationship. And so I to this day have trust issues with men because I've seen a lot of negative men. They're not family, but outside my peripheral that really showed me another side that I don't like. And you know, but I'm becoming that person to be that, I guess, that positive male figure to show other people there is possibility that men can change and men have the potential to have a huge impact. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's really focused on just teaching young men how to find their purpose to adulthood.
Hector?
So, you know, you mentioned like, you know, sheriffs gutting their gang and stuff like that. I mean, we've dealt that firsthand, you know, in the projects when they killed my homeboy Smokey, and many other deaths, you know, regarding LAPD, you know, LASD and stuff like that. And you know, it's unfortunate, it's horrible, you know, the way, you know how these things happen and stuff. And for me, I feel like, how do I deal with that now? How do I, as an individual, of what I think about, like, if I go back to the county, and sometimes I get those thoughts. What if you go back to the county, dog? What's gonna happen? How am I gonna, you know, I mean, like, you know, I know what I know, and I say, what are you talking about? That's not an option. You're not going back. And a gang is a gang, no matter what gang it is. You know what I mean? Like, you know, whether it be on who these guys feel like they're protecting to serve and all that stuff, and they're gang members, like, yeah, it's just like me, and you know, you're a damaged individual, and I can see that. We're all human beings. We all fall short of glory. We all need to be healed. I say Homeboy Industries is here for gang members, for us, you know, but truthfully, Homeboy Industries should be serving the guy in that downtown high rise who's got all these issues as I do. And I'm, you know, I might be brown or uneducated and from a street gang, but you might be rich and can't stand your life and you're doing other, you know, horrible things, whether to yourself or to other people. So I feel like we all need healing, and with that, you know, we would. It's not what Father Greg says. It's not about us and them. It's just us. And that us. It doesn't mean just us gang members. It means everybody. And yeah, that's what it's about. It's about healing. That's what I think.
I want to say something. I think Enrique wants to say something next. So I'm just going to put it like this. And we're going to end at 8 to 10 minutes. In the neighborhood where we grew up, there was one gang, the neighborhood gang. And then there was the sheriffs, that's another gang. And there was the LAPD, is another gang. And housing authority is another gang. And at the end of the day, we were more fearful of the LAPD and the sheriffs than our own gang, whether you were in the gang or not. In other words, we felt more safe in the neighborhood than outside the neighborhood. So we got to be clear about that. And the problem with having black and brown cops, just like black and brown ICE agents, is that often they're going to beat you up more to please their white colleagues than a white cop. Why be part of an oppressive system? I don't believe in that. And this happened in South Africa with the military when the ANC took over, when the Africans took over. Why replace white cops in military with black cops in military that are oppressive? We have to replace the oppressive system. Changing the color of the skin doesn't make any difference. Having a black president like Obama didn't make any difference. And we still had over 2 million people, mostly black and brown, in jail. It didn't make a difference. 2.7 million people, immigrants deported. So for me, it's not the color of our skin, it's the color of our consciousness. And so that I think that's more important. Enrique?
Buenas noches. Thank you for letting me talk. I want to thank you, your brother and Hector for putting this together. I was struck out in 2000. I was sentenced to 25 to life under 3 strikes for reckless driving, felony evading. A regular citizen would have just got 1 year or a $10,000 fine, but I got 25 years to life, and I served 20 years of that time. I was just released earlier this year in April during COVID, and I was brought down to LA County Jail. It was real sad to be taken there. It was real filthy. There was people living in filth. There was literally someone with feces in their cell for like 3 days, and they wouldn't let him come out, and they wouldn't allow him to clean the cell. He had mental issues, and the officers had took off because of fear of COVID. And then my neighbor on my other side was a 21-year-old facing life. He had committed murder, real misguided youth, real intelligent. So as I came down from prison, I was already attending college classes. I was already halfway into an AA in psychology. So I landed right there. I landed between a mentally ill person living in feces and a 21-year-old kid facing life. And it just angered me a lot, you know? So I was fortunate. The court released me because I had rehabilitated myself. While in the SHU, I earned a GED, which was rare back in like 2009. I was in Pelican Bay. I was in the hunger strikes and all that stuff. And, you know, I left a lot of guys, a lot of lifers on a level 4 behind, hard guys, you know? And they're all proud that I got out, and I continue going to college. I'm a full-time student right now in East LA. I'm working hard.
What's up?
I'm also attending an apprentice shop right now, so I could get a union job while I'm going to school. And there's just no stopping. I'm sober, and a lot of my friends actually, they want to get together with me. They want to celebrate that I'm out. At the time, I don't have no time. You know, I'm busy. But when I get that AA, when I get certified, well, when I'm really, you know, did something that I feel I did something, then we'll get together. And I just wanted to share that with everybody. And I really, you know, I didn't know what I was gonna hear. I was real happy that I heard Hector, you know, speak, you know, the truth. And I'm just real grateful to hear this. I hope to be part of this in the future and help, you know, in the community. Thank you.
Welcome home,
Thank
brother.
you.
I put my email there, Enrique, so you can apply to Cal Poly Pomona and transfer there. So just hit me up.
I might.
There you go.
Very, very possible.
My
Yeah, why
respects,
not?
Enrique. My respects.
Why not? You got this far, why stop?
There's no stopping.
This is what I was saying about Hector and Ismael and people like yourself and Jonathan, is that the knowledge that you all bring, and Karina, everybody that has spoken, you bring your own knowledge and experience to the classroom and outside of it, right? So that's very powerful, and that makes a big difference.
Jonathan and
Enrique, you're welcome to come to Homeboys, dog. Come check us out. We can hook you up. You know, I mean, if you're looking for get into the union and stuff like that, we have different connections, and you know, we have a team of people that are going to East LA College. We have, I mean, it's beautiful to watch that there was this huge team that went to East LA College, now Cal State. We have people in USC, UCLA. It's just like fun to watch, you know. And then what's the other brother's name? Jonathan. You mentioned Underground Scholars, and you know, just this great network that you guys are, you know, paving the way for brothers and sisters to just what we thought would never, what we would never even think of. You know what I mean? You guys are out there paving the way and embracing brothers and sisters, you know, to for a higher education. Just getting educated is feed, man. You know, and then, you know, of course, that's going to come with, you know, all these different opportunities, there's different vibes, and you know, I love watching this happen, man.
Yeah.
So keep it up, you guys. That's feed, man.
Definitely.
So just look up Hector at Homeboy Industries.
Just come down.
He already said it. It's on recording, so he can back.
I'll come back just to say hello.
Yeah.
Break some bread, man. Break some bread there.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll have the last comment or question, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Oh yeah, so I just had a quick question, but by the way, I want to thank all of you for like your wonderful insight, especially with what you just said about the oppressive system. Anyways, what do you think are the role of like other groups in helping out these efforts and whatnot? Because I'm not Hispanic, I'm not Black, but yeah, like I mean more so, I'm like a first gen Pakistani American, so we're kind of seen like as the outsiders or like the newcomers to this society, but more so thinking like, oh, like how do we build better relations with other groups? Because I know like obviously Hispanics and Blacks have been here for like a very long time. Been here as like yeah, they've been here ever since this like nearly the start, I would say. But yeah, it's always like wondering, like always gets me wondering like, yeah, how can like outsiders as well that they don't understand like the whole gang or street dynamic? Because I do know people that went to prison, like the feds and whatnot, but obviously like I'm a stranger to all that stuff. So, and obviously what you guys were talking about, like trust earlier, like I mean, like are young people and like gangs and whatnot, like this whole situation, are they like more so reluctant to get help from someone that is like a stranger to this lifestyle? So what are you guys' thoughts on that? Sorry if that's like a bit long of a question, but kind of waiting for that to ask this.
I think Hector can answer that because I work with kids. I work in high school, so it's a little bit different. But I think Hector can answer that one.
Thanks, Mom. So for me, it's just like, yeah, I don't care where you're from. If you want to jump in. Relationship is relationship, and it don't matter where you come from. And and you will be amazed when you do jump in. Just come in with the attitude of I'm going to learn and not teach. You know, like we're gonna be open. We're gonna have relationship and watch relationship. You know, those relationships just start to grow, and you eventually don't see color anymore. And I know that might sound a little corny and stuff, but I watch it happen at Homeboys all the time. And you know, and I know how strong we were in, you know, my brown skin, his black skin, his white skin, you know. So when we create relationship, it's not even all that stuff melts away. And then if it still comes up, then it's not about the people, it's about you, about how you feel in your own. And you know, then there's healing in that. You know, I don't know how. I grew up in a brown village, you know, so I don't know how it is really to be that much out of place. Sometimes I do when I'm in certain places. I remember I used to get nervous as shit when when I'd be around a bunch of suitors, and some of them were even Latino, but it made my hands, wet, and I've been through some pretty rough things, and to hang around these guys with suits, it just freaked me out. But now, like, things are different, and so when it just comes down to that, to your ethnicity and all that, I would say, come in. You want to learn about the homies, and you want to be a part of any crew, be part of the solution. Come on in and create relationships, and you'll see that won't matter.
Yeah, come to the Global Homeboy Network.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
So that's fantastic. So I think Samara wanted to say something, and then we'll just end with her comment or question.
Sorry, what? Oh no, I was just saying that Enrique and Jonathan are killing it. Yeah. I'm really
awesome.
I'm really like happy to hear, like, that was just really, really like refreshing. Obviously, I think it's like amazing that Hector and Ismail like shared their stories, and like obviously those were so heavy, but like just seeing that other side of the spectrum within the meeting, like seeing like Enrique and Jonathan like kind of still there and like on the other end of it, like really fresh out of it, is like really nice and refreshing to hear about. So
thank you.
Yes.
yeah, of course.
Just work hard. Just work hard.
Yeah. No, I work with like Hispanic kids, and like I'm always joking that like Hispanic people are like just like Pakistani people, because you're so hospitable and amazing. So like I really like Hispanic people. So
I think what we have in common is when you go to our homes, we feed you. That's the first thing we do. So
yeah, you're not allowed to leave without eating. Yeah.
So I just want to end with that on a happy note, and like I said, it's kind of this idea of kinship and bringing people together. So thank you everybody for joining us, and I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody applaud for Hector and Ismael and Enrique, and then we see Jonathan.
And Alvaro.
Yeah, the good-looking guy. You gotta. Let's face the looks. All right, y'all. So
thank you guys.
later.
Thank you so much. You guys have a blessed evening.
Bye.
Gracias.
Thank you.